said it in the spirit of partnership with us. I'm sorry, I obviously picked the wrong seat without the mic, so I hope you can hear me properly through this. I'm Roger Hurst. I'm the new Police and Crime Commissioner. I know quite a few of you already, having met you through previous experience as a borough and county councillor, and some of you, of course, over there on the campaign trail as well. So delighted to be here. Just to let you know how important I think it is to be here engaging with you and discussing your policing priorities. I'm actually ducking my own responsibilities at Brentwood Borough Council's full council meeting this evening to join you. So I'm afraid we won't be staying for the tea and biscuits later, wherever it may be. I'm going to have to get back there in time to take part in a couple of votes. But we will give you the time that you need to do the Q&A. Councillor Pothecary sent a very good invitation letter to us, running through the key issues of your community safety partnership and the priorities that you have here in Thurrock. I'm here obviously representing the governance of police across the entirety of Essex, but I can assure you that the issues you've raised, violent crime, burglary, domestic abuse, sexual violence, child sexual exploitation, gang violence, hate crime, antisocial behaviour, cyberbullying, honour abuse, honour-based abuse, serious organised crime and violent extremism all form part of the police and crime plan which we are putting together. I would like to regard this evening as part of the engagement programme that we have in the preparation of that police and crime plan. If you want to study where we are in detail in terms of the preparation of it, and it has to be an iterative process, we have to come out and tell you what we're working on and get your feedback. There is an extensive run-through of the basic skeleton of the police and crime plan on my website at the moment. But I think many of you should be familiar with it from the paperwork and the manifesto commitments that I made very recently before the election in May. Principally amongst those, very clearly clamping down on antisocial behaviour, addressing domestic violence and domestic abuse, which covers a good chunk of what you have down there, addressing the increase in serious and sexual violence, certainly taking a very firm line on gang crime and organised crime, and perhaps most importantly, taking a new line in terms of local, visible and accessible policing. We're adding into that on the basis of the feedback we've been having. This is the first full council meeting I've addressed, but we have been engaging with the public and with councillors through other forums already. We'll certainly be adding to that a priority on road safety. I think it's just worth noting that bad driving kills more people in Essex every year by a substantial margin than all of the organised crime and domestic violence put together. It is a very serious issue. And we will also be looking after victims and the vulnerable very much at the fore of that police and crime plan. So I hope those are priorities that you will share with us. We're already sort of taking steps to implement that. You're probably aware of the fact that I have a commitment to double the size of the special constabulary and make sure that there is a special in every community. And I would appeal to you really this evening to help where you can. There will be people who you know, cousins, nephews, sons, daughters, nieces, friends, whatever, who would want to volunteer. Please do encourage them. Please do put them forward. We will be, I think, Miles, it's fair to say, doubling the size of our recruitment programme this year to get to where we need to be, as well as improving our retention. I'm a little bit of trouble with Assistant Chief Constable Mason for having described our retention programme so far as not being adequate. Was that how I put it? I was a little bit less complimentary than that, wasn't I? But there we are. These things will make it into the press. But I think we are aware of the issues that we have to address there. We've also held a gangs conference already with a lot of the partners across the county taking part and committed £100,000 to seed funding to find new projects that we can use to new ways of basically distracting young people from becoming involved with gangs in the first place. That has to be the absolutely key way of preventing gang crime from taking off and starving these rather vicious people who will prey on the vulnerable in our society, who run the gangs from probably South or East London rather than from Essex down the county line, preventing them from exploiting a market which we hope we can actually make sure doesn't exist for them here in Essex. And of course, we're also reorganising our community policing and bringing it together in community safety hubs with the cooperation of people like yourselves. So those are three things that we've already undertaken. Assistant Chief Constable, the Chief Superintendent here, have a lot more detail to add to that. I think we're sort of limited to a fairly small amount of time, and I've just taken up probably half of it.
Yeah, I've got 4 minutes left.
Okay, maybe you'll indulge the Assistant Chief Constable, give you a bit more detail, then we'll take your questions.
I'll do my best to chop through this, and I obviously want to give members time to ask questions. Thanks very much for giving us the invitation. I volunteered to come here, believe it or not, because I used to be the divisional commander here in 2008, between 2008 and nearly 2011. So I do feel as if I'm coming home here, and I think it was last year that I was here with Andy Crockett, the Chief Superintendent. Sean O'Callaghan's the local policing area commander, so this is his area, and he'll be able to go into some detail also. The things that I want to cover here are to answer your question, Councillor, around HMIC inspection, around vulnerability, and indeed what Essex Police have done to respond to that. Secondly, local policing and in particular antisocial behaviour. I think it's fair to say that we may have, people of my level, may have given you the perception that we had turned our back on antisocial behaviour and it was over to the council. That was never the case. I came back into this role, having done it for 4 years before, in November, and antisocial behaviour is very much at the forefront of what we're trying to achieve in partnership with local authorities and other agencies. And then thirdly, I'd like to cover emerging crimes. Not new crimes, but emerging ones, in particular gangs, fraud, and online space as well, and criminality there, and the things, again, that we are doing about that. The context is, though, first of all, genuinely, we are still in Essex one of the safest areas in the country. And even when it comes to perceptions of antisocial behaviour, this is independent reports, British Crime Survey, we are 15th in the country out of 43 forces in terms of public's perceptions around antisocial behaviour. Antisocial behaviour here in Thurrock is down in the last 12 months. Dwelling burglary is down also. The area that isn't down is violence with injury. Violence with injury is up. And I'll go on to tell you about what we're doing about that. The HMIC inspection around vulnerability, over the, well, more than a quarter of a century that I've been in the police, going on for a third of a century now, there's been a fundamental shift over the last probably 4 years from a primary and predominant focus on volume crime to one that has seen an exponential increase in private type crimes such as domestic abuse, serious sexual abuse, child sexual exploitation, rape, and those very nasty offences that I joined the job to try to protect people, and now my officers share the same. But over that 4 years, there's been a really significant change in terms of focus and an exponential increase stimulated by some of the high-profile cases, as we all know, that have been in the media. The feedback that we received last year, and a year is a long time, I know it is in politics, but it also is in policing, caused Essex Police to respond, I think, very positively to the challenges that presented. But the proof of the pudding's always in the eating, they're just words. The things that we have done to respond to the vulnerability agenda include, we've reallocated, even in the era of austerity, 168 police officers and staff to the public protection space. So this is protecting the most vulnerable individuals, including victims of domestic abuse, child abuse and serious sexual offences. We've trained on a mammoth scale and involved the partners in a variety of conferences, over 5,000 of our staff, around being more aware of vulnerability. For example, children who are in the household that has been, the domestic abuse has occurred in, making sure that we identify and protect those children even though they haven't been a direct victim of those types of offences. 75% of our officers that deal with these types of serious matters are going through their journey to become detectives. That wasn't the case before. So the most experienced and the best detectives are now in that particular area. Missing children, which colleagues will be aware, is often or can be a trigger around sexual exploitation and indeed gang activity. Some of our urban street gangs will target the most vulnerable children in those particular homes to try to groom them in a different way. Working with your partnership here, your multi-agency safeguarding hub, I'll call it a MASH from now on, excellent information sharing and intelligence, and you know, one of the best partnerships here in the county, if I can say that, in terms of how you've embraced that joint working. But we do have the Children's Society that will do interviews with young people who've been missing from care homes to elicit the best information to enable us to support these individuals. The number of offenders that were outstanding, for example, for domestic abuse, we have about 100 domestic abuse incidents a day in Essex, about 30,000 a year, so that gives you an idea of the scale. Out of kilter with the rest of the country, and I think that could be perceived as being a positive issue, because actually members of the public and victims, often females, are more confident of coming to the police and other agencies to report these types of matters. From the period of time that HMIC inspected Essex Police, the number of outstanding suspects is halved. And there's a real focus on the Al Capone principles of these perpetrators, particularly the high end. If we can't get them for violence, we'll get them for other things. There's a really good, clear focus onto those types of individuals. We're in the process of creating a proactive team within the public protection space, and those individuals will be bounty hunters who will go out and target these individuals to make sure that they are brought to justice, using, you know, every tactic that we've got, including working with your council here to make sure that we bring them to justice, which is one of our core roles and responsibilities. Finally, the inspection report, the latest inspection report, has not been promulgated yet, but the verbal feedback that we've received, and I think it's important for me to make sure that you get the headline of that. The headline is, there has been a sea change in the approach within Essex Police to protect the most vulnerable. So there's been a considerable amount of work and effort from everyone, including partners, to be able to put us in a better position in terms of protecting vulnerable. Moving on to the community policing aspect, and I did say, well, actually I attended a public meeting, I won't name the location, and individuals, particularly with the reduction in PCSOs, with community members, were quite vociferous to say that's the death knell for community policing. My view is, and I'm not prone to the Pollyanna principle or optimistic bias, that it's not the death knell for community policing, provided that there are some caveats. Provided that we get community policing teams in every policing district, which we've got. So an inspector, 2 sergeants, 9 PCs, 10 PCSOs and 10 specials here within Thurrock, led by an Inspector Lee Argent, who most of you will probably know. The second aspect that needed to be right and proper to make sure we made best use of those resources is maximising the use of analysts. To be able to take, excuse the phrase, a sniper's rifle approach to the problem rather than one that's more disjointed in nature. So whatever your community safety priorities are, those analysts will support the analytical product to be able to focus into those particular areas. The third aspect, and Mr. Hurst has mentioned it, I've worked with specials all the way through my career, and I can always remember a sergeant saying to me, how can you get so many specials coming on with your shift? Because I keep them watered and fed, because I look after them, because I give them something back. They will reward this organisation significantly if we look after them. And we're in the process now, over the next 12 months, there will be 162 special constables that were recruited. But with Mr. Hurst's direction and support, we are looking to double the number of specials. We're not in a bad place though. Somebody said the other day, well, Kent have doubled their specials. We may have done, but they're still less than we've got in Essex. So we've still got a really good contingent of well over 300 specials within Essex, but we're going to look to double those. And the pledge that we're making is that those individuals will go into communities. So they're not going to go into predominantly back office roles, they're going to go into communities, and again as part of the community safety teams. The next aspect that needed to be in place, I think, to maximise the potential of community policing is community safety hubs. You've got an excellent record of working in partnership here, but what we really do need to do with your support is move towards the community safety resources from Thurrock Council and the community policing resources from the police working in the same location, sharing the information and intelligence, doing the joint patrols, getting directed by the analytical products, And at this stage, one of the chief execs on my travels, who will remain nameless, said, Maurice, all you're doing is trying to get our resources working to your agenda. My pledge is, it's not my agenda, it's the community's agenda, and whatever's in your community safety plan, those resources will work to that community safety plan. That's what they will be there to do. That is their raison d'etre, primarily and predominantly community safety plan. The fourth aspect, and it's the aspect that I would make an appeal from you, easy to deride, easy to ridicule, but it works. If I can make it work in Stoke-on-Trent, I can definitely make it work in Essex, and that's the concept of the active citizen, where you get Neighbourhood Watch, Residents Association, volunteers, working with the police to do something. So we've got in each of the districts now, we're in the process of recruiting people. We'll go out and do property marking, leaflet drops, patrols. In Colchester, we've already got them out there. Thurrock, we're working to attract individuals to do that also. So antisocial behaviour, definitely and firmly, if it's in your community safety plan as an issue, my pledge to you that those community policing resources will work towards alleviating antisocial behaviour in your area. I know where the top 10 locations are, the top 10 offenders and the top 10 victims. And we are doing our best with your colleagues to be able to sort that out. However, this is the fundamental difference, and I would look for your support on this one. I'm not saying that we go back to a year or so, 2 years ago, that we are attending very, very low-level incidents. So let me give you an example. Somebody's flicked a Malteser at me. There's a 4-year-old child that's run over newly laid concrete. What are you going to do about it? There are 2 kids playing on a trampoline. What are you going to do about it? Those incidents, because I went back to the shop floor and doubled up with a colleague at Southend, they were incidents that we did go to. But meanwhile, the domestic abuse incidents were going up. So, but equally, what we're not going to be doing is transferring them over to the local authority, because what I want to try to create with your support is a single team, collectively, to deal with the more serious antisocial behaviour. But if you are God forbid, a Fiona Pilkington in the making, we will identify repeat callers, we will identify if you're being targeted, and we will definitely undertake activity to alleviate that problem. The final element that I want, because I'm very conscious of time, is new and emerging crimes. Well, not new, but emerging crimes. A couple of areas, if I can call it gangs, first of all, and it was on the sheet, along with organised crime groups. They're totally different beasts. Urban street gangs are gangs that predominantly, but not exclusively, come out of London. They are, we know call them lines, we know the lines that they've opened up in the various different areas. Within Essex, most areas have got a problem, some areas have got an acute problem, and there's probably one area that was going towards a chronic problem, but we've managed to nip that in the bud, and that was Tendring in Clacton. It was starting to go into. The violence that's perpetrated by these individuals, in my now going towards a third of a century, I've never seen the violence that they will use, both internally to discipline their people, but also externally. They'll either take over a particular patch, or they'll put it under. That's their strap line. So they're very entrepreneurial. You will very rarely get the head of the entrepreneurialship. You often get expendables, some of whom in Clacton were 11 years old, some of the runners. Well, for me, that's a safeguarding issue. They're children, aren't they, at the end of the day? Interesting fact, perversely interesting, there must be something there that attracts young people to be interested in this. We boast, Essex Police, we can boast occasionally of 100,000 followers on social media. Some of these gangs have got over 1 million followers on social media. And we have to be very discerning, even when we have a high-risk missing person, as to whether or not we use social media, because they will target them. What we've got is, though, we've now got in your area, we've got Operation Raptor. So again, we've been able to get a team of individuals working, so they know them inside out. We have Operation Trident, the Met, they come to my tasking meeting. They deploy to the areas also, so we spot the individuals and we know them, and my officers know them. They know them inside out. They won't tell the officers anything, but we know them inside out. And we're using a range of tactics to be able to deal with them. Primarily linked to drug supply. Without over-egging the pudding, we're not going to collectively allow these individuals to take over our area. Because if they do, trust me, we'll have a problem on our hands. But we're not going to allow them, and we've had some fabulous results. You may have seen it in the media. quite recently, where we've had over £300,000 worth of drugs, weapons recovered, etc. The other area, and finally, because I'm conscious of time, and I'm sorry if I've blown the time, but I really did want to come and show you the respect that you deserve, is fraud and online crime. On the 21st of December, when Essex Police found that the cuts were not going to be as severe, the day after, as you can imagine, the Chief Officer team had an away day to discuss what we were going to do. It's like, in my opinion, we were going to be running at 10 on the gradient on the treadmill. We're now down to 6, but it's still difficult. We are going to invest 1.1 million into online and digital crime. That accounts for 20 officers to have a specialist team and an approach to dealing with that. That's a massive growth area. And we are dedicating resources to be able to deal with that. That includes fraud. And there has been a really important media communication to raise the awareness of this. And we're also, within that concept, identifying the most vulnerable people to try to protect them. So we ran quite recently a fraud week, obviously targeting elderly people, etc., and using neighbourhood watch, street passes, etc., to be able to do that. So as you can see, much the same as you wrestle with the challenges that you've got here, which is probably a growing demand and less resources and probably a change of focus, we too are doing that. But finally, even though I don't suffer from optimistic bias, I firmly believe that community policing, there isn't a death knell, and in fact you've got a formidable team, provided we get those aspects in place, to be able to deal with community problems and concerns within Thurrock. Finally, there is one other one that was on the sheet, and that was around hate crime. Hate crime has risen, but we've ran a number of, Tilbury is a classic for the council who's responsible for Tilbury, and we have run a couple of operations with your support, really strong partnership here to deal with hate crime. Probably, again, one of the most strong in the county around dealing with that. And since the election, we've seen since the Brexit referendum, we've seen a 50% increase in reported hate crime. Low-level matters. Some members of the public complaining about Nigel Farage or whatever around it, that'll get recorded because a hate crime, no matter what it is, if the person feels it's a hate crime, will get recorded as a hate crime. But the more serious end, politically motivated violence, etc., we are on that as collectively really important to deal with it. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Right, we shall now take questions. I've got questions here from some councillors. If you want to ask a question, please indicate and we'll take your name. Councillor Estelle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Could you just tell the Chamber what, if anything, you're doing to alleviate the problem of motorbikes that across the borough are causing mayhem at the moment? Thank you.
We have got within... Sorry? Thank you. Sorry, my etiquette is not as strong as Mr. Hurst. Sorry about that. Motorcycles, there's different sorts, aren't there? You've got the mini-motos, which is a problem, but not such an acute problem. We've got antisocial behaviour associated with motorcyclists, some of whom are not wearing crash helmets and committing other forms of crime. What we have got, and this is a force-wide initiative, and I promise you it is first class, and it's linked to the cruisers as well at Lakeside, which you know you've had a problem with. We've got our own road policing unit and casualty reduction unit. The casualty reduction unit, much the same as we are going to do in terms of focusing on to burglars and repeat antisocial behaviour offenders. We will analyse the information that comes to us. So you've already got a partnership here that focuses into road safety type issues. We will then analyse that with the trends and patterns, and then that particular team of resources, not for every incident, but for those incidents where there is a trend and a pattern and is becoming a significant problem, will be deployed from my tasking and coordination group to deal with that particular problem. Secondly, if it's a single issue and it's starting to become more of an acute problem with a particular resident or series of residents, and it's within your community safety plan, because this is a partnership activity, etc., then that community policing team, with the team from the local authority, will do what they can to be able to deal with it. We have deployed the casualty reduction unit down here frequently. And one of the things that I'll pledge to do to you, for you, Councillor, is to get you sent the update around what they've actually achieved when they come out on these particular operations to be able to quell that situation.
Thank you. We've got over 10 councillors that have indicated they wish to ask questions, so appreciate if we could have questions and answers could be brief so we can get through all of them, please. Next councillor is Councillor Soolittle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your report. Actually, Councillor Redsell actually touched on something I was going to say about your brilliant Operation Sacrifice. Because in 1 month, you've got 1159 sections issued for these off-road bikes, and 13 bikes and quads actually seized, which I think is excellent, and it's been a real good community effort, part of my rural community. So well done there. One problem we still have, though, with this is when we report crimes like these and we ring through to 101, it is still causing us a problem with how long they take to actually answer calls. Because very often, because some of my ward actually falls in, is edged onto Brentwood, they don't always know where we are. That's quite a bit of a problem. And also, it takes sometimes up to 15 minutes to actually speak to someone. So I think that is an issue. And while Roger's here, hopefully something can be said about how you're going to improve the 101 service.
Okay, I can cover that. And thanks for your feedback there, because I think that authenticates what I was saying there. There has been some really good work done. 101 telephones. This is what, to a certain extent, we're talking about this by way of what can we do to make the process slicker without investing. And I would like you just to consider what I'm going to say here, because I'm still considering it. But equally, you've got to act quickly. If it's a 999 call, so your more serious end telephone calls, we have 1 million calls a year, by the way, in Essex. What we want to try to do is to move people away from the phones to online reporting. And online reporting of 101s, which is in place now, by the way. But we have 1 million telephone calls. For the 999s, we will answer them within a matter of seconds, in well over 80, going on for 90% of cases. If you're reporting a crime, the stats show that again, 80 to 90% of cases you will get answered. The area that we have got, I'm not going to say a problem because I'm interested in your views, but we've got a bit of a wicked issue, is very, very low level, 101, that goes into the switchboard. Within the switchboard, by the way, you'll be answered 92% within so many seconds. It's when it leaves the switchboard to go to the call taker. The switchboard will triage, by the way. So, for example, if somebody phones through to the switchboard and it's a more serious end, it'll go straight in to be dispatched. So this is your very low level 101 incident. I know I hope they're not minimising, because I know it's never low level for a victim. I understand that. On average, the person will wait just over 2 minutes to get put through, and it costs 15 pence. So if you're on for 15 minutes, which the average is 2 minutes, it will cost 15 pence. The conundrum that I've got, and even with the PCC, is do we have to invest in that for low-level matters for a 2-minute wait for 15p? And if we do, it's got to come from somewhere. Or do we actually say, for the very, very low-level matters, that that's not that bad? For example, we've done some comparisons with Norfolk and Suffolk. They don't answer 101s after 10 o'clock at night. They don't answer 101s after 10 o'clock at night. What we are trying to do by way of the public contact programme is that we want individuals, for their ease, and the banks are a classic of that. You've ever noticed in the banks now, you self-service at first and your individuals are well down the bottom end, because they want people to do self-service and go online. And what we want to do is to exploit the online crime recording, online 101 reporting. We already have a month 370 crimes that are reported online, so that's a day's worth of crimes. But the bottom line is, and the feedback that I would greatly appreciate, and please email me, is do we make a case out to invest in that low-level 101 number for 2 minutes and 15p? And if we do, where does it come from? Or do we actually have to say, you know, this is not that bad? Controversial, but it's not that bad if you compare it to some other organisations.
Thank you. Keep answers. brief as possible, please, so I can get through the councillors that have indicated. Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you very much for your presentation. Most of the residents now have accepted that basically our police stations are not going to be. It's a bit hurtful, to be honest, because us at East Thurrock, we feel that we're on the far side, right way out the way. So what is your views on the police sharing premises, say with fire brigade or ambulance stations, as to have a police presence in the area? For instance, I'm a ward councillor at East Thurrock. There's no police station. We used to have a police station. Anti-social crime has gone up. Also, you say that crime figures have gone down.
No, not crime figures, antisocial behaviour.
No, right.
Yeah.
Let me just carry on. Crime figures like attempted burglary and actual break-ins, they're in two different crime figure sections. What we're saying with the antisocial behaviour, it takes so long sometimes for the police cars to get there. So, have you thought about maybe just sharing premises just to have a police presence?
That's a very fair question, and one that we are, and we're going to do it even more. So, for example, our approach to working with the fire service is moving on a pace. We are really advanced now. We're starting to turn some of the proposals into action. My local policing support unit, which is a community safety unit, so crime reduction officers, etc., at the police headquarters, is very close to moving over to Kelvedon Park to combine with the community safety team within the fire service. Incidentally and interestingly for me, they've got more people in their community safety team than we have. But the bottom line is we'll be able to share that accommodation and the way that we do business. Secondly, not the premises, but they are going out to the schools to do the schools' education on our behalf. Their access to schools is phenomenal. They have over 70% and aspiring to 100% of schools, and are doing inputs with a really good brand to the schools, and etc. In terms of the co-location, definitely. We are the community safety hubs here, although it's in transition, and the community policing teams, as you know, at the moment are at South Ockenden. That's not where I want them to stay. Where I would like them to move to would be within your building here. But with the satellite position, that we can have surgeries, for example, within the fire service, within the ambulance service, etc. So we are accessible to members of the community. Because even though, if you look at the footfall in these front offices, are very, very few, the bottom line is I know how important it is with members of the public to have that sense of reassurance. So the short answer is we're definitely doing it. It's massively on the agenda to bring it together even closer.
Councillor Pickler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm afraid that Councillor Redfield and Councillor Little have had the same problem I was going to raise, although I did have a second part to the question. And that's if there's no off-road facilities at all in Thurrock, if Thurrock Council were, and I stress the word were, to be able to encourage the setting up of an off-road facility on a suitable piece of land within the borough, is that something that Essex Police would actively support to reduce the nuisance of quad bikes and motorcycles on other land?
I mean, in terms of premises, so
Probably more on for me, is it?
yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say is I don't want them in the premises. I want them out dealing with the problem. But
No, if I understood you right, you're actually talking about some sort of distraction from doing it in the wrong place and giving them the right place to do it. That would, I think, be precisely the sort of thing that we'd be wanting to see a proposal put to the Office of the PCC about. We have sort of the funding to encourage that sort of alternative facility. Yes, please do.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, gentlemen. Unsurprisingly, I'm going to be talking about the same subject as three other councillors, and that is the scourge of these nuisance bikers that are tearing through our borough, from as far outside from Chadwell, through Blackshot, through Bellis in Ockenden, and into my own ward in Aveley. There are particular repeat offences on a daily basis over the past week, I've lost track of the number of calls. I promise you it's 50 to 60 calls, particularly, and I'll give you some intelligence, around Love Lane and the areas of Dacre Avenue. We need this nipped in the bud. I understand a couple of the poor lads were injured over the past 2 to 4 weeks, running around with no crash helmets on. One quite seriously, I was told. But anyway, yeah, if you can just help us and deal with this problem, that'd be great.
And if I keep it brief, I'm not being rude, I've been given the nod, if you like. But now that it's the third time, because part of the reason why I'm here is to listen, isn't it? The bottom line is, if it's come out 3 or 4 times, then for me, we've got to look at it, haven't we? Notwithstanding the councillor's comments around the work that we're actually doing there. I'm surprised it hasn't featured within the task and coordination, because we do the analysis around the ASB. But what I will do is, with Sean, and he can speak for himself, but we'll go away and have a good look at that, and we will get back to you, and we'll get the community policing team to make contact with you just to understand the problem a bit more, so that in partnership we can do something about it. But if it's come from 3 colleagues now, then obviously I'm duty bound to do something about it.
Councillor Clough-Carey.
I'd like to thank you all for coming this evening. It's good to have this opportunity to have a chat with you about sort of a lot of concerns that sort of members around the room have been sharing for quite some time. I would just like to start by having a very quick, can we have a yes or no about Tilbury Police Station and Ockington Police Station's futures, please? Are we going to get our stations back or not? And I'd also like to ask about the pot of cash. You know, Councillor Hurst will remember in our PCC panel meetings in Chelmsford that Nick Alston, a Conservative colleague, was very, very adamant we had a choice. We had a choice between dealing with ASB or domestic violence, hidden harm, sexual exploitation of children, those kinds of issues. I'd like to know how, with the same pot of money, you've come to a different conclusion. I'd also like to raise really quickly, over the last 2 weeks, we've had a massive problem in Grays Riverside with antisocial behaviour, very serious pieces of antisocial behaviour. I've had numerous complaints about it. From what I can tell, there's been relatively sort of radio silence from the police. I have been encouraging my residents to call 111. I tell them to do it on every occasion. I tell them to get the whole street to do it. But still, there doesn't seem to have been any response. Is this something that we can make sure that if we now have a commitment from you that you are going to deal with more than 3% of ASB, because that was what the letter said, only 97% would be dealt with. Can we please have a commitment that actually when our residents do make the effort, when they do go and ring 101, that the residents do actually see something come back, that they actually see some tangible results. And I would make clear for Roseman's side.
Antisocial behaviour, again, for me, if there is a trend and a pattern and it's causing members of the public, because sorry to rake up any coals that anybody's been a victim of, but it's horrible. And it does leave lasting impact on people's lives, no 2 ways about that. We will get the information, we'll definitely analyse it. Definitely if it's in your plan, which I know that it is, around the community safety plan, those resources, those policing resources, which I think are quite formidable, provided we use them properly, will deal with trends and patterns associated with antisocial behaviour, ranging from enforcement all the way through to different interventions to try to alleviate the problem at the root cause. So that is definitely a pledge, and it won't be 3%. It will be incidents of the high harm nature, so personally focused against individuals, or an individual that's vulnerable, etc. But those very, very low levels, I don't want to mislead anyone, those low level matters which I described three incidents of, they will not be a priority for Essex Police to be able to deal with. And there is a part of me that actually thinks, if it's a single occasion like that, our tolerance levels, I think, as a society, has to just take cognizance of the fact that, there are more important antisocial behaviour incidents that finite, usually small amount of resource needs to deal with.
On the other 2 points that you raised, I think I've been very clear, was throughout the election campaign, that we will not be reversing the decisions that were made last October. So it makes no sense to me to want to spend £30 million doing it buildings we don't use. It makes no sense. The Assistant Chief Constable has already described how few visits there are to police stations. We need to be present in the community. That does not mean to say that we need to run buildings that we don't need. We will change the estate, we will reduce the running cost of the estate, and we will release capital to invest in other things which will improve the effectiveness and efficiency of the Essex Police, principally in new IT, smartphones, tablets, meaning that they can actually work remotely and be out and about on the street in your communities, policing them, rather than having to return to a police station to do paperwork, which at the moment is an awful lot of their time. We'll also be using IT better to spot the hotspots that the Assistant Chief Constable was just describing. We can do an awful lot more, I know, from having installed other IT systems in other organisations. We can do a lot more in terms of using the intelligence that we have much more cleverly to be able to clamp down on where stuff is going wrong more precisely, more focusedly and faster. And that will reduce the level of crime. You asked very rightly the question, what am I going to do differently from my predecessor, who was also a Conservative, who did present that stark choice between ASB and high harm. I suppose my answer to that is that's what I do. A few of you will know me from my history at Brentwood Borough Council and Essex County Council. We took 40% out of Brentwood's budget. We didn't cut any services apart from a dog catcher who had caught 6 dogs in the previous year, none of them vicious, and a rat catcher who had caught some rats, but when we actually enforced rather than catching rats, we solved the problems rather than encouraging the rat population. Apart from that, we cut nothing. We took 570 million out of the County Council budget. Obviously there have been some cuts like park night lighting there, you're very well aware of them, but I think overall you must admit that that scale of saving has not been visible to the public. In a previous existence, before I became a councillor, I've also restructured some major international organisations. I've never come across an organisation, no matter what stage it thought it was at, of successful reorganisation, where you couldn't save at least 10, more likely 15% of the costs. If we can do that, we can reinvest in the sort of policing that you want to see. I'm confident we can. These guys have already scared me witless by taking me out in fast cars, driving about 90 miles an hour around the streets with flashing blue lights, and then putting me in a stab vest and taking me to some really hairy events. But I've scared them witless by making them produce their spreadsheets in a format they're not familiar with, making them go through zero-based budgeting and come up with ideas as to where we can deploy our resources more effectively. We are not looking to cut the money spent on policing in Essex. We are looking to deliver more policing for the resources that we have available, more effectively to the right places, and that's what I'm here for.
Councillor Haig.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks very much, everyone, for attending this evening. I represent Chapel 100, we've got Lakeside in our area. You mentioned the potential for Lakeside. Lakeside's got the potential to draw gang activity from London and elsewhere. You have touched on that this evening, but can you reassure residents that you're actually on top of this issue? By giving a little bit more about what you're actually doing, working with the Met, etc., in terms of dealing with that threat in the area?
Gang-related activity is not an acute problem at Lakeside. Cruises is, as you know. We have had, again, as you will be aware, the stabbing at Shepherd 100 that was tenuously linked to Urban Street gang activity there. Reassure colleagues around the things that we're doing. We have had significant arrests. We have had many operations. We have stopped and searched many individuals. We've recovered weapons in your area, this area I'm talking about. We know who the main lines are. We know who the runners are. We have got good intelligence. We do deploy resources from the Met here. We have got our own Operation Raptor teams who are focusing into those individuals. Mr. Hurst put his hand in his pocket metaphorically and pulled out £100,000 to support that, which was announced on the Gangs Conference. One of the things I will share with you, and I think it illustrates the point, during that Gangs Conference there was an ex-gang member there, and I asked the question from an enforcement point of view, what makes you, when you were a gang member, quake in your boots from an enforcement point of view? And he went on to tell me about lots of interventions that were not enforcement. And I sat there thinking, he hasn't answered my question. The sad part about it is I think he probably has. because they're that expendable, these individuals at that particular level. We will be vigorous in terms of our enforcement, but there has to be other ways of being able to do it. We need public health on board, we need the health, the CCGs on board, etc. We need the education on board to start to make sure that these individuals who are at risk are diverted away from that type of behaviour.
Thank you. Councillor Cherry.
Good evening, sir. It's an excellent presentation. Thank you. But briefly, during your presentation, you mentioned the word retention, but then you didn't say anything more about it.
This retention of specials.
About the retention of specials. I thought you meant your own police colleagues. Perhaps you could, how many police officers are currently non-operational? And for the PCC, I presume, and is there to be too much reliance on the special constabulary in the future?
Okay. Just around the operational aspect, we have, again from the HMIC point of view, we have value for money profiles, which compares and contrasts, as you can imagine, the proportion of individuals that are on the front line. That can be, to some forces, quite nebulous in terms of the definition of the front line. But nevertheless, we are very favourable with the proportion of resources that we have actually got on the front line vis-à-vis other forces. So, for example, our used to be called, in old money, support services, now called shared services, so the back office function, that's a collaborative element with Kent. And we are going through another iteration of trying to make sure that we make savings, rationalise, much the same as you will be wrestling with here. Mr. Hurst's point and the continued savings plan that we have actually got and have instigated, the pledge that the Chief and Mr. Hurst have made that any resources financially, once we've met the deficit, will go into local policing.
In terms of the, sorry, in terms of
If I'll just make one thing clear, I mean, when I said retention for officer retention and the availability of officers for operation purposes, I think of officers fit for duty as opposed to backroom staff.
Right, that's a good point. We were in a difficult position when it came to sickness levels within the force. We really were. We have made great strides recently to reduce that figure in terms of the number of individuals that are sick. We are now in the process of introducing many different occupational health initiatives to be able to reduce the number of restricted duties officers. In proportion to other forces, our number of restricted duties officers is quite high. And you know this, that policing is a very dangerous game. Our officers and staff, particularly our officers, put their life on the line for the people of Essex. Sometimes they actually give their life for the people of Essex. 2012 PC Diabell. So it is a very stressful role with passionate individuals. Our job is to make sure that we challenge those individuals who, you know, may not be where we want them to be by way of being available, and to support colleagues to be available for operational policing. That is definitely a work in progress in terms of the sickness. But to reassure, it doesn't mean that those officers are not actually dealing with things, because what we do, we use the restricted duties officers to take statements from victims of domestic abuse. We use them to take statements for antisocial behaviour. We use them to do civil orders around the motorcycles. We use them to do civil orders around the gang-related activity, with the intention of swiftly getting them back to operational policing.
Sorry.
So, Councillor, I have got 7 other councillors still wanting to ask a question, and we've only got 6 minutes left. So please, can I go on to the other councillors, because you have asked 2 questions now. Thank you.
If you want to email me, just a pleasure to show you the respect, please email me. It's on the system and I will get back to you. Councillor Cherry.
Can we make our questions brief, please, councillors? Councillor Tolson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. I believe you said earlier that hate crime has gone up in Essex by 50%. So are you meaning Essex or Thurrock? And if you mean Essex, what does that equate to in Thurrock, please?
Yeah. Since the Brexit election, the numbers is 46% that they've gone. So that, what is it, a week or 2 weeks? And the numbers accounted for, just to put it into context, thank you, I should have remiss of me, 46 offences in total. Now, that's across the whole of the force. The number in Thurrock, as you can imagine, on a daily basis, we probably don't have any reported. The numbers that we have here are, whilst they're on the increase in proportionate terms, there's still few. Of course, what we need to do, and different from the police point of view, is to encourage people to come forward, to make sure we treat it seriously, and to make sure we alleviate those types of offences. I think the Brexit vote, for some reason nationally, and within Essex, and within Thurrock, has increased the number of hate crimes, but the numbers are very few, and they're very few when it comes to Thurrock.
Councillor Okaname.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The issue of makeup is actually my question, and we've partly sort of identified it as managing from the basic election. But my question is that what forward planning and possible steps are you taking to ensure all people of Thurrock are protected, and I mean proactively protected, because it's better safe than sorry?
Yeah, the model that we've got, whilst will evolve, and I'll give you an example of what we're doing around public protection, so domestic abuse, the proactive teams, etc. That will definitely evolve. We, from a serious crime point of view, have got a collaborative serious crime directorate, which deals very effectively with the serious end, including organised crime groups. HMIC graded them good, so that's not me saying that. And of course, local policing in terms of our approach to community policing. For the lower level, notwithstanding the fact that if you're a victim of it, it's never low level, those community policing team resources, in partnership with your agency and other agencies, will do our best to be able to deal with those matters that are relevant to local communities. In the future, in terms of how it's going to develop, there are collaborative arrangements with other forces. There are discussions and consideration given to how we can actually make best use of our resources with a lot less funding, including better use of IT, better use of mobile data terminals, better use of body-worn videos to make sure that we exploit the officers' time far more effectively.
Councillor Spillman.
Hello there, thank you very much. Last year there was a fairly extensive and fairly devastating report really that said that 1 in 5 crimes weren't being recorded as crimes correctly, they were being recorded as no crimes. And this wasn't just low-level stuff, it was some pretty serious crimes, including rape and some serious sexual offences. Have you done analysis into Essex's fault to see what extent this is a problem? Have you done, and have you got, can you assure us that 1 in 5 crimes are not being recorded as no crimes in Thurrock, and what safeguards have you put in place? Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah, we've got a very robust approach, and our accurate recording policy is very good. Right, that's me saying that, so that really, you'd expect me to say that, wouldn't you? HMIC, during those inspections, inspected Essex Police. We came, in terms of the proportion, the second best in the country in terms of data accuracy and integrity. Our reporting and recording of serious sexual offences, again, was towards the top of the pile. But we're not complacent about that, and we've got a robust series of processes in place to make sure that we maintain those high standards of ethical and accurate recording.
Councillor Roger Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. We've heard a lot about the various actions you're taking, and I'm pleased that this is the third public meeting that I'm attending with the police in the last few weeks. At the meeting at Chafford 100, which Inspector Lee Norris came to, there was an issue about gangs, which was raised as Councillor Gary Haig has just mentioned. But it was, the question was really about linking HMOs, houses in multiple occupation, to gangs, because what we are made to understand, Madam Mayor, is that it's not all houses in multiple occupation or houses that have many families that are required to be licensed under the law, but it seems like there are houses in Chafford where previous gang members from London gangs are brought or they are moved away from the hotspots in London and brought to Thurrock or maybe Chafford and therefore setting up base there. What link have you got to HMOs, and what information from the Met do you have about people being moved out of London into Chafford? Thank you.
You are right, by the way. There's some gang members that are buying up their premises. Sometimes they are more devastated than that they don't buy them, they just take the premises over. It's called cuckooing. And of course they take over the vulnerable person that's in there and then start dealing from the premises. In terms of the multi-occupancy, the local partnership here, the local community safety partnership, of which protecting the most vulnerable and gangs is on the agenda, is the forum to be able to bring that together by way of interagency action. The best part, I think, of the community safety hubs moving forward is the ability to take the Al Capone approach to dealing with it. If you can't get in for crime, let's get in for tax evasion. And those types of approaches that you raised there, if there's ever an era where partnership interaction and activity is needed, it's now. And again, last appeal I'll make, I'll look for your support around making sure that we start to deliver on that community safety hub as a partnership here.
Councillor Head.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, for attending. My question kind of backs on from Councillor Spillman's, actually. I think he made a really good point. But for me, there's only a couple of reasons why people wouldn't call the police or notify the police of an incident. One, they're totally apathetic due to either hearsay or personal experience, often negative calls. Or two, that they're scared witless of the consequences of reporting crimes to the police. So in addition to the accuracy which Councillor Spillman's raised, my question is also how on earth are we reaching out to people who either have lost faith or are so scared that they daren't call Essex police? Those are the vulnerable people, which I think we definitely need clarity on the outreach to.
I think you make a very good point. I'm answering this one because it actually goes beyond the civil policing action, probably more into the broader aspect of how we handle victims of crime. And I mean, I had a meeting actually today with Crime Stoppers, who are one of the key building blocks in making sure that we do that. Obviously, the first issue you raise is an issue of trust in the police. And I think that there is a lot we can do to build that. I think that the cuts of the last couple of years have damaged people's appreciation of policing. And I think that we do need to be out and about more, and we do need to be more visible in uniform. That's part of the current plan, to be more local, more visible and more accessible. That very presence builds trust. I was recently out doing some school stuff. The people leading the session asked of who the kids viewed as trusted adults to go to when they were in difficulty. I was shocked that they didn't mention a police officer. They mentioned teachers, they mentioned parents, they mentioned other doctors, etc., but not the police. We need to change that. We need to be out in schools, making sure that people feel a connection with the police that they haven't got. But you're absolutely right. The bigger issue really is those who feel scared to go to the police. They have to give their details. Are they going to be identified? They know the perpetrator. They know what they're like. They don't want to know who reported them. Really, the good place to go there is Crime Stoppers. And if you haven't got the number, I can recite it now, but it's probably easier to look at my website. But please do make sure, if your residents come to you, direct and have that sort of nervousness, direct them to Crime Stoppers, because it's completely anonymous and very effective.
We're running a Crime Stoppers campaign now to do with urban street gangs. It's running now, so please, with your constituents, if you can push that.
Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you for attending this evening. Earlier this year, there were some police meetings held, actually in the Homesteads area, and a couple of parts around East Thurrock as well, where the police were able to attend and residents were able to ask questions, and they went down really well because it kind of links into what Councillor Head mentioned about bringing the trust back into the police as well. Will you be looking to do more of those in the upcoming maybe year or so? In particular as well, to my residents in Fogham, for example, who are quite elderly population, who aren't able to get to areas quite easily and speak to people.
Particularly if there's a trend or a pattern of antisocial behaviour, I would definitely see, because the community policing team and partners will be charged with actually alleviating that, and part of that is to involve the community, isn't it, to be able to alleviate the concerns with antisocial behaviour. So the short answer is yes. I had dinner with Professor Martin Innes, who was one of the authors of neighbourhood policing back in the 90s. Familiarisation, visibility, accessibility, the basic pillars, aren't they, problem solving of neighbourhood policing. Visibility doesn't always have to be a physical visibility. It can actually be performed really well on the online space. That's why the community policing teams, for example, have all got access to social media, where we start to reassure communities, communicating with the things that we're actually doing. Don't get me wrong, you've got to touch down and do something, but it doesn't always have to be a physical meeting.
Thank you. And last member, Councillor Garish.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And just a quick question from me. So in terms of the way that analysis and data is used in terms of setting priorities, in particular with antisocial behaviour, I've certainly had a number of conversations with residents where they phone up once, they don't get a result, and then they don't phone again. And clearly, in terms of building that data set on the problem in an area, those repeat calls are crucial. So one of the things I'd ask is, would you consider helping sort of educate people to understand how that kind of data-led policing works, just to make sure that people do have the confidence that if they do make repeated calls, if people in their neighbourhood make repeated calls, they can then expect to respond to some of these issues that can be much bigger than the one call that sometimes will come through.
In relation to repeat callers, it's information that I review monthly, because that is really key on two issues. Victims that are being targeted repeatedly, and exactly that point, are we missing those individuals? What we need to do better is to explain, and certainly through our colleagues behind and the media to assist us with that, is not every single call of antisocial will be reported, will be attended, but it is monitored and it is logged, and then we will address that. So we will do better in relation to that communication.
Thank you. Councillor Hurst, do you want to do you have any concluding remarks to make before we finish this evening?
I answered the councillor, but probably more. Thank you very much. No, I mean, I just wanted to say, really, we have appreciated this. We do get an enormous amount of feedback from discussions like this evening. So I think we've taken away some stuff in particular about the issue that you're having with motorbikes and that sort of antisocial behaviour. But I hope also it's been helpful to you in terms of understanding better how we are approaching these topics. I would very much welcome more feedback via email or in writing or however, in terms of what we've said here this evening, if you have it to make. My email address is on the BCC website, easy enough to find. I'm sure you'll manage that. But equally well, the address is there as well if you still prefer to write to me. We're very open-minded that way. So if you would like to, please do give us more feedback. It needs to feed into the development of the Police and Crime Plan. It needs to be a plan which is as much your plan as it is my plan. So we're very pleased to have the opportunity to be here and discuss these issues with this evening. Thank you for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the Assistant Chief Constable and Chief Superintendent and the Police and Crime Commission for coming this evening. I think we've had a very detailed discussion, and the invitation still stands if you want to stay for the meeting and any part of our committee. You're more than welcome, but I understand if you have